Hi, my name is Lee Hoofnagle. For my senior project, I did mechanical engineering. Um, I've always wanted to do everything mechanical. Like as a little kid, I tinkered with toys. I always took them apart. I was always taking apart my pen in class. I just love tinkering with random odds and ends. I don't know why. I just find a lot of joy in it. So for my senior project, I wanted to find a way to create a form of personal transportation. So I had a bicycle that was in my garage for a long time. It was just laying around. I decided I was going to do something with it for senior project. So here's a bicycle on just sitting in my garage. It's covered in mud. It hasn't really been used in a long time. It's all rusted. So my first steps were just to break the bicycle down, replace parts that needed to replace, like brake pads, clutch cable, or excuse me, brake cable. The seat needed to be adjusted. So I gave the bike a good wash, good tune up, and I repainted it. Next, I ordered the parts for the engine because I wanted to create a motorized bicycle. So the first part that came in was a rear sprocket, which is just a gear on the back wheel that uses the drivetrain to power the bicycle. Didn't take too long, wasn't that complicated. It's pretty much just a bolt on. Didn't run into too many problems. I had to take the wheel off the bike just so it would be easier. And then in the next couple days, I got all the parts for the engine in the mail, and I assembled the engine. The exhaust is laying next to it right here. This is basically just the entire engine. There's a couple other things that are missing in this picture, like the ignition coil and the throttle and everything like that, the carburetor. This didn't take too long. It was pretty self-explanatory. It didn't come with a manual or instructions or anything. It was just kind of a figure it out yourself. So it didn't take too long. I already knew how to assemble an engine beforehand. Next was getting it on the frame itself. Now to prep the bike for putting the engine on, I had to strip it down of everything. So it was just down to the handlebars in the frame. There was no tires, no brakes, no cables, it was completely stripped down, no seat. And most of the time when people were working on bicycles, they use a frame mount. This is one of the problems I ran into because I didn't have the money frame mount. So I just used an old lawnmower tire and wheel, and it set in perfectly. It kept it in place while I was working on it, so it worked for me. Next, what I had to do is, this engine was made for beach cruising bicycles that have a much wider frame. So I had to get a scissor jack from a car, like a backup jack from when you're changing a spare tire, and I had to bend out the frame tubes so that the engine itself would fit. And I also had to bend in a part here at the top so the spark plug would clear it. Another thing I had to do to get everything to fit properly was make my own intake filter on the carburetor, because the one that came on it did not fit, and I couldn't bend out this one, or else the structural integrity of the bike would just completely go to waste and the bike would be useless. Another thing is, I bolted on the ignition coil, and it's connected up to the spark plug. I had to check that just for clearance. And there's the lawnmower tire and wheel, like I mentioned earlier. Next was putting the bicycle back together itself. So I put on the tires and the handlebars, the seat, the kickstand. From here, I also put on all the accessories that came with the kit, like the fuel tank, the fuel line, fuel filter. This was right before I put the actual drivetrain on, because the way this bicycle works, the way you crank it up is you hold in the clutch and you start pedaling it like a normal bike, so you still have the bicycle chain that's on there, and once you get to a high enough speed, you drop the clutch, and the engine kicks up, and you're off. So in order to have throttle or anything like control your throttle, you have to install these throttle grips. And the way I did that was I cut off the old rubberized grips that were on there, and on the right side I drilled a 1/4-inch hole so the new throttle grips could so they could fit in. It also came with a kill switch that I had to wire up. And this wasn't too hard, although I didn't have a steel bit on me because this is a steel bicycle frame. So I had a wood bit and it barely got through, but it got through and it worked, so it worked completely for me. Then this is my project facilitator. He's my friend's dad, and he helped me a lot because this was the first time I really went into two-stroke engines. So as far as this, he came up with the idea to use a scissor jack to spread the frame, and he helped me put the engine together, a couple of other things, and without him, I don't know if I could get it done or not, but he definitely taught me a couple things about two-stroke engines and bicycles, because this is completely out of my domain. I'm used to dealing with cars and dirt bikes and stuff like that, so this is a little bit out of my area, but he knew what he was doing. And this is the finished product minus the chain. I took the chain wasn't on in this picture just so I could roll it around, but everything else is on there completely working. A couple things I had to do. This is the final stage. All I had to do from here out was all the tuning and adjusting. I had to find the proper gas to oil mixture, since this is a two-stroke engine. And it's not fuel injected, it's carbureted. So the carburetor had 2 adjustments I had to adjust after I found the gas to oil mixture, which ended up being 32-to-1, which I initially thought it would be 50-to-1. The carburetor you have to adjust the air to fuel ratio, and you have to adjust the idler ratio, or the idler pin. So what RPMs it idles at, and how much, or what the ratio of air to fuel you're putting into the engine, into the combustion chamber. After a couple of tweaking, I had to take apart the carburetor and adjust a little C-clip every time, so that took a really long time for me to actually find out. The seat, I need to mention this really quick. The seat was kind of weird because it was not the original seat on the bike, so it does this weird wobbling thing, but I ended up drilling and tapping another hole and tightening it down with a new bolt. So the seat no longer wobbles as much as it did before. It actually is a really nice seat. It's leather and has springs. And here's the new throttle grips I installed in the kill switch. Is that little yellow tab up there. That's the clutch lever, and on the right side, that lever is the brakes. The bike currently only has rear brakes because I didn't have any front brakes on the bike originally, so there you go. I do plan on getting front brakes for it because I need to be safe when I'm riding this. The bicycle does work. Its top speed is 53.8 miles per hour. That's as fast as I wanted to go before it started to wobble, and then I let off of it. The chain has snapped once, but it's not that big of a deal. All I need to do is buy a new link and then cut it the link. I did burn out the clutch originally when I drove it the first time, so I had to order a new clutch, and I greased it properly. That way it wouldn't happen again. So other than that, I haven't run into any more problems as far as it just working and driving around. It gets great gas efficiency. It gets 100 miles per gallon, so it's only a 1.5 liter gas tank, I'm fairly sure, but you don't fill it up often. So are there any questions? Oh, and one more thing I need to mention, something I learned about myself is that I can overcome problems as far as mechanical issues go with not having the right tools, and I've expanded my knowledge about two-stroke engines. My current plans after high school, this last October I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and this next August I ship out from Parris Island. After that, I plan on going to West Georgia to master it in mechanical